"Let me sleep in the barn," Hannah Crowley said, "and I'll wash what's hurting your child." Wade Harlan should have said no. A widowed rancher with a baby girl, a 6-year-old son, and a name already chewed thin by town gossip had no business taking in a pregnant woman after dark, especially not one standing in the rain with a soapbox in her arms and nowhere decent to go. Behind him, Mercy cried from the wagon bed, her small voice raw from another long day of rash, damp blankets, and hands that meant well but did not know what to do. Luke sat beside her, stiff-backed and watchful, guarding his sister like a little old man. Wade looked at Hannah's belly, then at the wet road, then at the closed boarding house door down the street. "What did they say you did?" he asked. Hannah's mouth tightened. "They said, clean soap does not make a clean woman." A muscle moved in Wade's jaw. He had heard worse said in church vestibules, at feed counters, outside schoolhouse doors. Folks in Dry Creek Ridge knew how to turn pity into punishment if a woman stood alone long enough. Still, he did not open the wagon gate. Not yet. Hannah shifted the wooden box against her hip. "I'm not asking to come into your house. I'm not asking for your name. I'm not asking you to believe anything about me." Mercy cried again. This time, Hannah looked at the baby blanket, not the man. "I'm asking for hot water," she said, "and one night to prove I'm useful." 2 hours before Hannah Crowley asked Wade Harlan for barn shelter, she was standing in the boarding house washroom with her sleeves rolled up and her hands buried in freezing rinse water. The washroom sat behind Mrs. Della Pritchard's boarding house, where steam never reached the corners and the floorboards stayed damp. Hannah had been there since dawn, washing sheets, boiling towels, and shaving the last bar of lavender soap into a basin so the place would smell less of sickness and old tobacco. She did not own the room she slept in. Mrs. Pritchard let her stay in exchange for washing, mending, and making soap when tallow could be spared. A pregnant woman without a husband learned to be grateful for arrangements no one called mercy in public. By sunset, her back ached deep and low. The child inside her shifted whenever she bent too far over the tub. Hannah pressed one wet hand to her belly, waited for the tightness to pass, then reached for the last towel. That was when she heard women's voices beyond the half-open door. "She cannot remain here," one said. "She has nowhere else," Mrs. Pritchard answered, but not firmly. "That is not the concern of decent households. Children pass this wash step. What does it teach them, seeing a woman in her condition with no ring?" Hannah knew the third voice before she saw the black gloves. Beatrice Vale attended every church supper and every relief meeting where a woman's character could be weighed beside the biscuits. She spoke as if gossip became duty once said softly enough. Hannah lifted the towel from the basin and wrung it out. She had heard versions of that question before. Who was the father? Why was there no wedding? Why would a clean woman be left alone? No one ever asked what promise had been broken to leave her that way. Mrs. Pritchard stepped into the washroom with her mouth drawn thin. Beatrice stood behind her, eyes moving over the soap shavings, the scrubbed towels, Hannah's swollen belly. "Hannah," Mrs. Pritchard said, "I have to think of the reputation of the house." Hannah laid the towel across the line. "The sheets are finished." "That is not what I mean." "I know." The quiet answers seemed to irritate Beatrice more than tears would have. "Clean sheets do not clean a name, Mrs. Crowley." "Miss," Hannah said. Beatrice blinked. "My husband died before anyone here met him," Hannah said. "The papers were lost with his people. You may call that convenient if you like, but it does not make me what you have decided." Mrs. Pritchard looked away first. That was how Hannah knew she was already gone. Within 10 minutes, her belongings were placed by the back step. 2 dresses inside a flour sack, a tin of salve wrapped in cloth, a strip of soft linen saved for the baby, and her wooden soapbox. Mrs. Pritchard did not throw anything. She was too careful for cruelty that left splinters. "You can try the church relief committee," she said. Beatrice's mouth tightened. "Not tonight. Not without review." The words landed colder than the rain. Hannah picked up the soapbox first. 6 bars remained inside, each wrapped in brown paper, each one cleaner than the hands that had judged her. Mud shone in the wagon ruts behind the mercantile. Down the street, men laughed under the store awning, then stopped when they saw her step into the rain. She did not look at them. A woman could survive hunger. She could survive insult. What wore her down was not showing which word had cut deepest. She walked toward the livery because it had a roof, and because the baby inside her had begun to press hard beneath her ribs. At the general store, a ranch wagon stood half-loaded with flour, lamp oil, and feed sacks. A man in a worn coat stood beside it, one hand gripping the brake. In the wagon bed, a baby cried. Not a hungry cry. Not only tired, Hannah heard the raw scrape beneath it, the kind that came when skin had been rubbed too long by damp cloth. Beside the baby sat a little boy, stiff as a fence post, holding a gray blanket to his chest. The man turned when he noticed Hannah looking. "I'm not begging," she said before he could speak. His eyes moved from her wet bonnet to the soapbox, then to her belly. He looked too tired to be unkind and too cautious to be generous. Behind him, the baby cried again. Hannah took one step closer to the wagon, close enough to see the red rash at the child's neck and the crusted line where harsh soap had dried in the blanket's fold. "What's her name?" she asked. The boy pulled the blanket tighter. The man said, "Mercy." Hannah swallowed. Of all the names in the world, it had to be that one. She looked toward the closed boarding house door, then at the wet road leading nowhere good. "Let me sleep in the barn," Hannah Crowley said, "and I'll wash what's hurting your child." Wade Harlan did not answer Hannah at once. He looked at the rain sliding off her bonnet, then at the wooden box held tight against her side, then at the baby in his wagon who had cried herself hoarse. A decent man would have taken a woman in from the rain. A careful father would have driven away before the town saw too much. Wade had spent the last year trying to be both and failing at each. Luke watched from the wagon bed with Mercy's gray blanket gathered under his chin. The boy's eyes were too old for 6. They measured Hannah the way a small animal measured a hand coming through a fence. "You know soap?" Wade asked. Hannah's shoulders rose once beneath her wet shawl. "I know what bad soap leaves behind." The answer was not pretty. It was useful. Wade opened the back of the wagon. "Barn's cold. So is the road." He gave a short nod, and that was all the bargain received. Dry Creek Ridge sat 3 miles beyond town, where wagon ruts cut through mud and sagebrush leaned flat under the rain. Hannah rode on the rear board beside flour sacks and lamp oil, one hand gripping her soapbox and the other steady on her belly. Wade did not ask about the child. She was grateful and hurt by that in equal measure. Mercy cried most of the way. Each time Hannah glanced toward the baby, Luke shifted between them. "She don't like strangers," he muttered. "Most babies don't like being sore," Hannah said. Luke frowned, as if she had given an answer he had not expected. The ranch house appeared out of the dark with a yellow lantern in the kitchen window. The yard was not neglected exactly. It looked like a place where every job had been started by someone too exhausted to finish. A broken milk stool lay beside the pump. A row of frozen cloth hung stiff on the wash line. Wade lifted Mercy from the wagon. The baby's cry broke sharp when the blanket rubbed her neck. Hannah heard herself say, "Don't wrap that fold against her skin." Wade paused. Luke stepped down fast. "You don't tell Pa." "I'm telling the blanket," Hannah said softly. That confused him enough to silence him. Wade carried Mercy inside. Heat from the kitchen stove met them, but the room felt colder than outside. A tin basin sat unemptied near the back door. Dishes waited on the table. A cradle stood by the stove, with one runner propped on a folded newspaper. There was a woman's absence in the house, but not in the neat, holy way people spoke of at church. This absence had left drawers half open, linens unboiled, a child standing guard, and a man afraid to touch the wrong thing. Hannah stayed at the threshold until Wade noticed. "You asked for the barn," he said. "I did." "Then why are you looking at my kitchen?" "Because your baby is hurting in it." For a moment, Wade looked as if he might send her straight back into the rain. Then Mercy cried with no strength left. Hannah lowered her soapbox to the floor. "Hot water. A clean cloth if you have one. Not wool. Not that gray blanket. And I need to wash my hands first." Luke stepped in front of the cradle. "You ain't taking her." "I won't take her." She turned her palms up where he could see the cracked skin, the raw knuckles, the thin pale scars where lie had bitten too deep. "You can hold her. I'll show you what to change." No one had offered Luke a place in the helping before. Adults either pitied him or moved him aside. His face did not soften, but he did not say no. Wade set Mercy on Luke's lap, while the boy sat in the wooden chair nearest the stove. Luke held his sister stiffly, terrified of hurting her, and terrified of letting anyone else help. Hannah washed her hands in water Wade pumped and warmed. She did not use her own soap yet. First, she sniffed the gray blanket. Not dramatically, not with disgust, just close enough to know. "Too much lye left in the wash," she said, "and it dried damp." Wade's jaw tightened. "I washed it twice." "I believe you." That made him look at her. "A man can wash a thing twice and still not get the bite out," Hannah said. "Especially in cold water." She took a strip of clean linen from her bundle, the one she had saved for her own baby, and folded it small. She dipped it in warm water, then looked to Luke. "May I?" Luke did not answer. He only loosened one corner of Mercy's collar. That was permission enough. Hannah wiped the red skin gently, changed the fold beneath Mercy's neck, and laid the gray blanket aside. Mercy's crying did not stop all at once. It thinned. It caught. Then, for the first time since town, the baby dragged in a breath that did not break. The silence afterward frightened everyone. Luke looked down at his sister, as if a door had opened under his feet. Wade looked at Hannah as if she had done something larger than wash a child's neck. A knock came at the kitchen door before anyone could speak. Wade's face closed. The woman who entered wore a black coat without a drop of rain on it, as if weather had the sense to avoid her. Beatrice Vale took in the open bundle, the gray blanket on the floor, the pregnant stranger beside the stove, and Mercy quiet in Luke's arms. "Well," she said, drawing a small notebook from her pocket. "This will be written down." By morning, Beatrice Vale's notebook had become heavier than any pan in Wade Harlan's kitchen. She did not stay long after writing her first line. She looked once at Mercy sleeping against Luke's chest, once at Hannah's wet bundle near the stove, and once at Wade, as if he had already failed a test no one had told him he was taking. "A barn is no place for a woman in her condition," Beatrice said. Hannah lowered her eyes, but Wade answered before she could. "Then I reckon folks should stop leaving women with no better place." Beatrice's mouth tightened. She left without slamming the door. People like her never needed noise to make a threat. The barn was colder than Hannah expected. Wade cleared the corner stall himself, shook out 2 feed sacks, and hung an old saddle blanket across the gap where wind pushed through the boards. He did not apologize for the straw or the smell of horses. Hannah did not thank him too much. A woman who thanked too much reminded people they had power over her. She slept 3 hours before Mercy began crying again. This time, Hannah did not enter the kitchen as a stranger. She knocked on the doorframe, waited for Wade's nod, washed her hands, and asked Luke to bring the tin basin. The boy hesitated only long enough to prove he still owned his caution. The gray blanket was not used again. Hannah took ash from the stove, a shaving from one of her own soap bars, and hot water Wade pumped before sunrise. She did not make a cure. She made a routine. Rinse, wipe, dry the folds, lay clean linen where wool had rubbed, hang the damp cloth near heat, not against the cold wall. Luke watched every motion. "Why don't you just put more salve?" he asked. "Because salve on dirty cloth only traps the hurt underneath." He thought about that for a long time. Like mud under a saddle. Hannah smiled before she could stop herself. Exactly like that. Wade heard from the stove. He said nothing, but later, when Hannah stepped outside with the basin, she found the pump handle wrapped in burlap so her cracked hands would not freeze to the iron. That was the first kindness he tried to hide. By noon, the ranch had begun to show how broken it truly was. Not ruined, not lazy. Broken in the way, a harness looked whole until weight was put on it. There were shirts washed stiff with soap bite, baby cloths dried too close to smoke, towels folded damp into a drawer, and one small pile of Eleanor Harlan's things no one had dared move from a chair by the bedroom door. Hannah did not touch that pile. Instead, she asked for tallow. Wade looked at her across the kitchen table. "For soap? For soap that won't burn your daughter raw. I've got store soap." "I know." That was all she said, and somehow it was enough to make him look ashamed without making him feel accused. The general store smelled of coffee beans, lamp oil, and wet wool. Wade took Hannah in the wagon but left her by the door as if distance could protect them both. She held her empty wooden box and asked Mr. Voss for lye, clean cloth, and whatever tallow was not rancid. The store went quiet. Mr. Voss looked past her to Wade. "You buying for the ranch, Harlan?" Hannah answered, "I'm buying for work." "You got money?" Before she could open her mouth, Wade set coins on the counter. "Put the lye in my name." 2 women near the flour barrel turned to each other. One whispered enough for Hannah to hear. "Now he's paying for her soap." Wade's face did not change. "And 3 yards of clean cotton." "For the hands?" Mr. Voss asked. Wade paused. "For the house." The correction was small. It landed large. Hannah did not look at him because if she did, she might show too much. They returned with lye, cloth, tallow, and more attention than any decent person would want. Hannah worked behind the house where the wash line sagged between two posts. She rendered the tallow slowly, skimmed what had spoiled, measured lye with the care of a woman handling a loaded pistol, and kept Luke 2 steps back. He stayed anyway. When the first new soap cooled enough to cut, Luke pointed to the smallest bar. "Can Mercy have that one? It needs time." "How long?" "Long enough to stop biting." Luke frowned. "People should do that too." This time, Hannah did not smile. The boy had not meant to sound wise. He had only said the truth as children did, by accident. Dr. Silas Wren came near dusk, called by Beatrice, though Wade had not asked for him. He examined Mercy's neck while Hannah stood by the stove with her hands folded over her belly. "Who changed the washing?" the doctor asked. Wade looked at Hannah. "Luke did too." Hannah said, "I did." Dr. Wren grunted. "Keep doing it. Rash is down. Fever's gone." It was not praise. It was better. It was proof. When the doctor left, Luke carried Mercy's clean linen to the table. "Show me the fold again," he said. Hannah guided his small hands once, then let him try alone. Wade watched his son smooth the cloth under the baby's chin, with the concentration of a ranch hand learning a knot that might save a horse. Outside the window, Beatrice Vale stood near the yard fence, black notebook open against the fading light. This time, she did not write one line. She wrote 3. The first county question arrived on a folded paper carried by Deputy Amos Bell, who looked sorry before he even stepped down from his horse. Wade met him at the porch. Hannah stayed near the wash line with Mercy's linen in her hands, pretending not to hear. Luke stood beside the rain barrel, pretending harder. "Routine inquiry," the deputy said. "No such thing," Wade answered. Amos shifted his hat. "Mrs. Vale asked the clerk whether your household had taken in outside help. With the children being minors, and with Mercy still under a year, the office wants record of who is living on the property." Wade took the paper but did not open it at once. Hannah felt the cold move through her fingers. She had known Beatrice was writing. She had not known the writing could write out this fast with a county seal. "I can leave before supper," she said. Luke turned sharply. Wade did not look back at her. "Nobody asked you." "County might." "That ain't county standing in my yard." It was not tenderness. It was not a promise, but it held her in place for one more breath. After the deputy left, the house changed in a way no broom could fix. The same stove smoked. The same towels steamed near the chair. The same baby fussed when wind pushed under the door. But now every ordinary thing seemed ready to become evidence. A woman sleeping in the barn. A clean cloth folded near the cradle. A boy learning to wash his sister's blanket. Hannah felt herself becoming dangerous by being useful. That afternoon, she kept her distance from Mercy. She showed Luke where to place the warm linen, but let him do the work. She stood back when Wade lifted the baby. She set salve on the table, then stepped away as if the air around the cradle belonged to someone else. Luke noticed. Children noticed what grown people hid badly. "You mad at Mercy?" he asked. "No." "You mad at Pa?" "No." "You mad at me?" That one hurt. Hannah crouched near the stove, careful with her balance. "Never." "Then why you standing like church ladies do?" Hannah looked toward the bedroom door, where Eleanor Harlan's untouched things still lay folded on the chair. "Because some folks think I am standing in the wrong place." Luke followed her eyes. "That was Mama's chair," he said. "I know. You never sit in it." "No. Beatrice sits in it." Hannah did not answer. Luke's mouth tightened. He went to the cradle, took the small linen square Hannah had cut for Mercy's neck, and carried it to her. "Then stand here," he said. It was not a grand speech. It was a 6-year-old boy holding out a cloth with both hands, stubborn and scared. Hannah took it as carefully as if it were glass. That night, rain beat softly on the barn roof. Wade had moved Hannah's bedding from the corner stall to the tack room because the wind had shifted. He said the saddle oil needed warmth. She let him keep the lie. She was folding her spare dress when Luke appeared in the doorway in his nightshirt, barefoot on the cold boards. "You'll catch your death," she whispered. He held out a tiny bar of soap. It was one of the first batch, not cured enough to use, pale and rough at the edges. "I took it," he said. "I see that. Is stealing bad if it's to keep somebody?" The question found a soft place in her and pressed hard. Hannah lowered herself onto the overturned crate by the wall. "Usually," his face fell, "but telling the truth after is better than hiding it." Luke looked at the soap in his palm. I put one in Mercy's cradle, so she won't cry if you go. Hannah closed her eyes for half a second. There were words people expected from pregnant women, from poor women, from women who had been given a roof for one night and were already taking up more space than promised. She should have told him she might go. She should have warned him not to count on her. She should have protected him from wanting anything the county could take away. Instead, she said, "Mercy does not need soap to remember me." Luke whispered, "I do." Behind them, the barn door creaked. Wade stood in the rain-dark opening, one hand on the latch, his coat damp at the shoulders. His eyes moved from Luke's bare feet to Hannah's face, then to the small stolen soap in the boy's hand. No one spoke. The next morning, Wade found the other bar. It lay inside Mercy's cradle, tucked near the wooden runner, wrapped in a scrap of clean linen. Mercy was awake beside it, kicking under her blanket, her cheeks less red than they had been in weeks. She turned at the sound of Hannah's step and reached both hands toward her. Hannah stopped at the doorway. Luke stood on the other side of the cradle, watching his father. "She sleeps better when it's there," he said. Wade picked up the little bar. It was too small to matter and too large to ignore. On one side, pressed unevenly by Luke's thumbnail, was the beginning of a crooked letter. "Hud." Wade held it in his palm for a long moment. Hannah waited for him to scold the boy, to tell her the cradle was not hers to mark, to remind everyone that a woman in the barn was still a woman outside the family. Instead, Wade placed the soap back where Luke had hidden it. "Let it cure," he said. Luke's shoulders dropped with relief. Hannah looked down before Wade could see what that mercy did to her. Then a horse sounded in the yard. Deputy Amos had returned. This time, he did not look sorry. He looked official. Wade opened the door before the deputy knocked. Amos held out a county envelope stamped in purple ink. "Hearing notice," he said. "Household fitness review. 2 weeks from Friday." From the cradle, Mercy reached for Hannah again. And this time, Wade saw that the county was not the only one asking who belonged in his house. The county notice stayed on Wade Harlan's kitchen table like a loaded gun no one wanted to touch. Luke walked around it. Hannah wiped the table around it. Wade folded it once, unfolded it, then set it beside the coffee tin as if changing its place might change what it meant. 2 weeks from Friday, the county would ask whether his house was fit for children. After that, every kindness became careful. Hannah no longer stepped into the kitchen without knocking, even when Mercy cried. Wade no longer asked her to sit at the table, though he left coffee near the stove where she could reach it. Luke noticed both things and grew cross with everybody. "You act like she's glass," he told his father one morning. Wade looked toward the barn, where Hannah was hanging clean cloth in the pale wind. "Glass breaks if fools handle it wrong." Luke did not understand. Hannah, standing close enough to hear through the cracked window, wished she had not. That afternoon, Wade rode the fence line alone and came back with mud to his knees. A calf had broken through the lower rail near the creek. Ordinarily, he would have called for a hand from the next ranch. Instead, he worked until dusk, setting the rail himself, jaw tight, shoulders stiff. Hannah saw the reason before he said it. Every borrowed hand meant another mouth in town. Every mouth in town meant another version of her name. She took a lantern to the barn after supper and found Wade in the tack room with a hammer, 2 boards, and an iron hinge. "You'll wake the horses," she said. "They've heard worse." "What are you fixing?" "Door don't close right. It closed yesterday." "Closed ain't the same as holding." He did not look at her when he said it. The tack room had changed. The feed sacks were gone from the corner. A narrow cot stood against the wall, covered with 2 clean quilts. He had patched the gap between the boards with strips of canvas and moved a small crate beside the cot for her soapbox. A lantern hook had been nailed where the light would reach without smoke blackening the rafters. Hannah stood still. "You should not have done all this," she said. "Cold's coming. I have slept colder. That ain't a reason to keep doing it." He drove another nail into the hinge. The sound carried through the barn like a thing being settled. Hannah touched the edge of the quilt. It was not Eleanor's. She knew because Wade had been careful not to use anything from the chair by the bedroom door. The care of that almost hurt more than the gift. "You're making it look like I'm staying," she said. Wade's hammer stopped. After a moment, he said, "I'm making it so if you stay tonight, the door holds." There was no promise in it, but there was shelter shaped by his hands. The rain began again before he finished. It tapped on the roof, slow and patient. Wade set the hammer down and rubbed one hand over his face. In the lantern light, Hannah saw how tired he was beneath the work. She cried like that after Eleanor died, he said suddenly. Hannah did not move. Mercy. First weeks, she cried till morning. Luke wouldn't sleep unless he could see the cradle. I washed what I knew to wash, boiled what I knew to boil. Folks brought broth, prayers, advice. Beatrice brought black dresses and told me a house needed order. His mouth tightened. I thought if I kept the cattle fed and the roof patched, the rest would mend itself. Hannah heard what he did not say. It had not. You were grieving, she said. I was her father. Both can be true. Wade looked at her then, and the look was too open for either of them to hold long. A horse sounded outside before he could answer. Beatrice Vale stood at the barn door under a black umbrella, her face pale and composed. I wondered why the lantern was burning out here, she said. Wade stepped between her and Hannah without seeming to decide. Beatrice's eyes moved to the cot, the quilts, the patched wall. This is exactly what I warned the clerk about. It's a dry room, Wade said. It is a signal. To who? To everyone. A pregnant woman in your barn was already questionable. A pregnant woman made comfortable by your hand looks like something else. Hannah felt heat rise in her face, though the room was cold. Wade's voice lowered. Careful. No, Wade. You be careful. If she moves into that house, if she is seen handling Mercy as if she belongs there, you will give the county every reason to ask whether grief has made you reckless. She can't stay in the house, Wade said. The words were quiet. They struck Hannah harder than if he had shouted. Beatrice looked satisfied, as if she had finally pulled truth from him. Wade continued, not while they're watching, but Hannah had already stepped back. She heard the first sentence more clearly than the second. Women like her learned to hear the part people meant and ignore the part kindness added later. Beatrice left with her umbrella and her certainty. Wade turned, but Hannah had begun folding the second quilt at the foot of the cot. You don't need to explain, she said. Yes, I do. No. She made her hands keep moving. You have children to keep, Hannah. The sound of her name in his mouth nearly undid her. She lifted the soapbox onto the crate, then took it down again. I've never needed a house, just a place to be useful until it was time to go. Outside, the rain ran from the barn roof in silver threads. Wade looked at the patched door, the cot, the lantern hook, all the things his hands had said before his mouth had failed. But Hannah was no longer looking at them. She was looking at her flour sack bundle in the corner, measuring how quickly it could be packed. The next Sunday, Hannah's name appeared on a paper tacked beneath the schoolhouse notice board. Not her full name, just enough of it. Pregnant female resident on Harlan property. Household fitness review pending. Men read it while brushing mud from their boots. Women read it with hymn books pressed to their chests. No one said Hannah Crowley aloud while she stood across the road beside Wade's wagon, but silence could point as plainly as a finger. Luke saw the notice before Wade could turn him away. What's resident mean? He asked. Wade folded his hand over the boy's shoulder. Means county likes long words. Does it mean Hannah? Hannah tightened her grip on the soapbox. Wade looked at her then, and the apology in his eyes was worse than any insult on paper. Inside the schoolhouse, Deputy Amos Bell had cleared the teacher's desk for county folders. Beatrice Vale sat in the front row with her black notebook open. Beside her were two churchwomen, Dr. Wren and Mr. Voss from the general store, all waiting as if the hearing had already begun, though this was only a preliminary inquiry. Amos looked uncomfortable. This is not judgment. It is record-gathering, Beatrice Rose. Then record this. My sister Eleanor died, leaving 2 children in a house already strained past decency. Wade is a good cattleman, no one disputes that. But grief has made him careless with domestic matters. A baby girl cannot be raised by saddle soap, feed sacks, and a stranger sleeping in a barn. A few women murmured. Hannah kept her eyes on the floorboards. Beatrice continued, voice steady, reasonable, almost kind. I do not say this woman means harm. That is not my claim. But she is unmarried, heavily pregnant, dependent on Wade's shelter, and now handling Mercy's linens, salves, and cradle things. If the county waits until scandal harms those children, it will be too late to call it protection. That was what made Beatrice dangerous. She did not sound cruel. She sounded prepared. Dr. Wren cleared his throat. For the record, Mercy Harlan's rash improved after the washing changed. Beatrice turned to him. Improved under supervision? The doctor hesitated. Hannah heard the trap close. Wade stepped forward. Under my roof. Your barn, Beatrice corrected. The room shifted. Wade's jaw locked. but Hannah touched 2 fingers to the side of her dress, not enough for anyone else to see. A small warning. Do not fight the wrong sentence. Amos closed the folder. Formal hearing remains 2 weeks from Friday. Until then, the county recommends no change in household sleeping arrangement and no unsupervised handling of the infant by non-family residents. Non-family. The word followed Hannah all the way back to the wagon. That afternoon, Beatrice came to the ranch with a cedar chest tied in the back of her buggy. Wade was out checking the creek rail. Luke was in the barn loft, sorting kindling. Hannah was alone on the wash porch, taking down cloth before frost could stiffen it. Beatrice stood beside the buggy. These belonged to Eleanor. Hannah looked at the chest but did not move toward it. The wood was pale cedar, carefully oiled, with Eleanor's initials burned into the lid. I won't touch them, Hannah said. I know. Beatrice's voice softened, and for the first time, weariness showed under the iron. That is partly why I brought it. She opened the lid. Inside lay baby linens, folded white and clean. Soft gowns, cotton squares, a small blanket edged in blue thread. Enough cloth to have kept Mercy comfortable for months. Hannah's breath caught before she could hide it. You had these? Beatrice shut the lid halfway. They were my sister's things. Mercy needed them. Mercy needed her mother. The words came out sharp enough to cut them both. Beatrice pressed one gloved hand to the cedar lid. You think I do not see what happens in that house. Luke watches you. Mercy reaches for you. Wade looks at you like a man finding water, and everyone expects me to be grateful because the baby stopped crying. Hannah said nothing. My sister is barely cold in the ground, and already another woman's soap is in the cradle. It was Luke's doing. He is 6. He does not understand replacement. No, Hannah said quietly. He understands comfort. Beatrice's face changed. Not anger first. Pain. Then anger came to cover it. If you speak of this chest at hearing, she said, you will make Eleanor look like a mother whose own family let her children suffer. You will put my sister on trial to save yourself. Hannah looked at the white linen again. There was the truth. Not all of it, but enough. Wade had not failed every wash. Luke had not guarded a dirty house because no clean things existed. Mercy had suffered partly because grief had locked useful cloth inside memory. And Beatrice had held the key. Wade came into the yard before Hannah could answer. His eyes went from Beatrice to the chest to Hannah's face. What is that? Beatrice closed the lid fully. Eleanor's things. Wade went still. Hannah saw him understand too slowly, and then all at once. You had the baby linens, he said. I preserved my sister's belongings. Our daughter needed them, and my sister needed not to be erased. The yard fell silent, except for the wind pulling at the wash line. Wade took one step forward. You will bring that chest to the hearing. Beatrice lifted her chin. So Hannah Crowley can explain how another woman's memory should be cut up for rags. Hannah turned sharply. No. Wade looked at her. Hannah, no, she said again, softer. Not like that. He stared at her as if she had chosen the wrong side, but she had not chosen Beatrice. She had chosen Luke, who still whispered to his dead mother's chair. She had chosen Mercy, who would one day need to know her mother's name had not been dragged through a county room. She had chosen Wade because a man should not have to defend his living child by putting his dead wife on trial. Beatrice tied the chest back into the buggy and drove away before dusk. That night, Hannah folded her clean cloths by the barn lantern and placed only 3 bars of soap in her wooden box. Not all 6. 3 meant work. 3 meant leaving room. Hannah Crowley began leaving 3 days before she touched the wagon gate. No one in the house noticed at first because she did it the way poor women learn to do everything dangerous, quietly, between other people's needs. 1 bar of soap went into Nora Pike's egg basket with a note asking her to keep it until after the hearing. 2 clean cloths were folded beneath Mercy's cradle, not near enough to look like Hannah's work, but near enough for Luke to find. The small tin of salve stayed on the kitchen shelf because a rash did not care who the county called family. Her own things fit too easily into the flour sack. That was the part she hated most. A life should have made more weight than 2 dresses, a wooden box, 3 bars of soap, and a strip of linen for a child not yet born. But Hannah had learned to travel light before anyone could complain she was taking too much. The morning was cold enough to silver the pump handle. She stood beside it before sunrise, rubbing her belly with one hand while the other held the sack open. From the kitchen window came the low creak of Wade moving about before the children woke. She could have stayed until the hearing. She could have let Wade argue, let Dr. Wren speak, let Nora tell the county what clean hands had done in that house. She could have let Beatrice's cedar chest sit like a secret between all of them. But if Hannah stayed, she would be the question every county man asked first. Who was she? Why was she there? What right did she have to touch Mercy's cradle, Luke's blanket, Wade's kitchen, Eleanor's empty places? The answer in her heart was not an answer the law would honor. Because they needed me. Need was not family, not on paper. Behind her, the barn door scraped. Luke stood barefoot in the straw, hair sticking up, face pale from sleep and alarm. In his arms, he carried Mercy's clean blanket, the one with the corner Hannah had mended after the old soap bite had worn it thin. You forgot this, he said. Hannah's throat tightened. That belongs to Mercy. He stepped closer. Then Mercy needs to go too. The words were not dramatic. They were worse. They were practical in the terrible way children could be when grief had taught them that people disappeared unless you packed the right things. Hannah knelt, slowly, one hand braced against the pump. Mercy cannot come with me. Luke's chin began to tremble, but he fought it like a man fighting a horse much too large for him. She sleeps when you fold it right. Your pa knows the fold now. He don't sing. I don't sing. You hum. Hannah closed her eyes. She had not known he heard. Luke pushed the blanket toward the sack. If you go, she'll cry again. That is not true. You don't know. No, she did not. That was the cruelty of love. It made promises a person had no right to make. She took the blanket from him but did not put it in the sack. She held it between them. Luke, listen to me. If I leave, it is not because I want Mercy to cry. It is because I do not want anyone taking her from your father. His eyes searched her face. Beatrice? The county. Pa won't let them. Your pa has been fighting alone a long time. I can fight. You are 6. His mouth hardened. I can still stand in front. The words broke something open in her. Hannah reached out and smoothed his hair once, the way she had promised herself she would not do unless asked. He did not pull away. You should not have to, she whispered. The yard gate creaked. Wade stood near the wagon, coat half-buttoned, hat in one hand. He had heard enough, maybe all of it. His eyes moved to the flour sack, the soap box, the blanket between Hannah and Luke. For a moment, he looked older than 37. Luke turned on him with the fury of a child betrayed by every adult in reach. She's leaving. Wade did not deny it. That hurt Hannah more than if he had. He crossed the yard slowly. Mud clung to his boots. His gaze did not leave the sack. That all of it? He asked. Hannah folded the blanket tighter. I never had much. No. His voice was rough. I mean, is that all you plan to take from us? She looked up. Wade's face changed before he could hide it. He had seen the mistake in his own words, the way they made her sound like a thief when she was trying not to take anything at all. I didn't mean, I know what you meant. No, you don't. He stepped closer, then stopped when Luke edged toward Hannah, as if guarding her now. That small movement struck him visibly. His own son had chosen a side because Wade had waited too long to name his. Wade looked at Luke, then at the blanket, then at Hannah's belly, her cracked hands, the soapbox packed to leave before anyone could order it. You thought I fixed that tack room so you could leave warmer, he said. Hannah did not answer. You thought I kept you out of the house because I was ashamed. The cold air held still. Aren't you? She asked. Wade flinched, not from anger, but from the cost of hearing what his silence had taught her. No, he said. The word was too small for what it needed to repair. He looked toward the house, where Mercy had begun to stir. Then toward the road that led to the schoolhouse, the county stamp, Beatrice's notebook, every decent reason to stay careful. Careful had brought them here. Wade took the flour sack from Hannah's hand. She stiffened. He set it in the wagon bed beside the seat, not in the back with cargo. Then he lifted the soap box and placed it next to it. What are you doing? Hannah asked. Hearing is Friday. I know. You're not walking away before people get to lie about why. Wade. No. He turned to Luke. Get your boots. Luke blinked. Why? Because if the county wants to ask who has been keeping Mercy safe, they can ask all of us. Hannah rose slowly, one hand on the pump, the other over her child. Wade looked at her then, not gently, not safely, but finally without hiding. You came here through the barn, he said. That was my mistake. He opened the wagon gate. When we go to that hearing, you come with me through the front door. Wade Harlan did not take Hannah to the schoolhouse by the side path. He drove the wagon straight up to the front steps, where church women stood with folded hands and men stamped mud from their boots before entering. Hannah sat beside him, not in the back with sacks, not half hidden behind feed barrels, but on the front board with her soapbox at her feet. Luke held Mercy between them, the clean blanket tucked under the baby's chin. When Wade stepped down, he did not offer Hannah his hand quickly, as if ashamed to be seen doing it. He held it out and waited until everyone saw her take it. The schoolhouse went quiet before they reached the door. Inside, Deputy Amos Bell sat at the teacher's desk with county folders stacked beside an ink pad and purple stamp. Beatrice Vale occupied the first bench. Mr. Voss from the general store stood near the stove, his arms folded. Dr. Wren leaned by the window, and Nora Pike sat alone with a basket of eggs in her lap, as if she had come to market and judgment both. Amos cleared his throat. This hearing concerns the household fitness of Wade Harlan, widower, father of Luke and Mercy Harlan. Beatrice rose at once. And the influence of Hannah Crowley, non-family resident. The word moved through the room. Non-family. Hannah kept her hands still over her belly. Beatrice opened her notebook. Since arriving on the Harlan property, Miss Crowley has slept in the barn, handled the infant's linens, prepared salves, entered the kitchen at irregular hours, and become emotionally entangled with the children. Luke frowned. Entangled means bad? Wade put one hand on his shoulder. Not always. Beatrice's eyes flicked toward the boy, then away. Children grieving a mother are easily confused. Mercy is too young to know who reaches for her. Luke is too young to know what is proper. That is why adults must decide before attachment becomes harm. Hannah felt Wade's hand tighten once against the bench. Amos looked to Dr. Wren. Doctor? Dr. Wren stepped forward reluctantly. The infant's rash improved after Miss Crowley changed the washing routine. Fever reduced. Skin healed. I saw no sign of harm. Under whose supervision? Beatrice asked. Common senses, mostly, the doctor muttered. A low sound moved through the room, almost laughter, quickly swallowed. Nora Pike stood next. Her basket creaked in her hands. I sold Hannah tallow before any of you knew her name. She paid fair or worked fair. I've seen dirty hands in clean gloves and clean hands under cracked skin. Hers are the second kind. Mr. Voss shifted by the stove. This is sentiment. The question is reputation. Wade looked at him. Say what you came to say. Voss lifted his chin. Vale family has already informed my store they will reconsider all supply accounts tied to Harlan cattle if this matter is handled unwisely. There it was. The price, set on the table like a bill. A few men looked at Wade then, with the practical pity reserved for a rancher about to lose credit before winter. Wade stood. Hannah turned toward him, fear rising fast. She expected him to argue law, to explain where she slept, to promise rules, distance, supervision. Instead, he lifted the wooden soapbox and set it on the teacher's desk. This is what she brought into my house, he said. Beatrice's mouth tightened. Exactly. Wade opened the box. Inside lay 3 bars of soap, a tin of salve, folded linen, and the small crooked bar Luke had marked with an H. No, Wade said. Not exactly. He picked up Mercy's clean blanket from Luke's lap and laid it beside the box. When Hannah came to my wagon, my baby's skin was raw from cloth I washed wrong. My son was standing guard over a cradle because every adult kept taking from him what little he could still protect. My kitchen was not fit. My wash was not fit. My grief was not fit. The room went still. Wade's voice did not rise. That made it carry farther. I am their father. I should have known more. I should have asked sooner. I should not have let pride turn help into shame. If the county wants to mark somebody careless, mark me, but do not call this woman a danger for doing what I failed to learn fast enough. Hannah's breath shook. Beatrice whispered, Wade, Eleanor. I remember Eleanor, he said, and the gentleness in it was worse for Beatrice than anger. I remember her every morning Luke looks at that chair. I remember her every time Mercy's eyes catch the light. Hannah never asked us to forget her. He turned to the benches, to Voss, to the churchwomen, to the county folder. If this county wants to know who made my house safe again, look at the woman you called dirty. No one moved. Then Luke climbed down from the bench. He did not make a speech. He only picked up the little soap, marked H, and placed it beside Mercy's blanket on the desk. She showed me the fold, he said. That was all. Mercy began to fuss in Hannah's arms, because at some point Wade had placed the baby there without asking permission from the room. The baby turned her face against Hannah's dress, settled, and reached one small hand toward the soapbox. Amos looked at the child, then at the papers before him. Beatrice sat very slowly. Her notebook lay open in her lap, full of careful lines that suddenly looked smaller than the baby's hand. From beneath her coat, she drew a key on a blue ribbon and set it on the desk. "The cedar chest," she said. Her voice was thin. "Eleanor's linens. They should be in the house." Wade closed his eyes for one moment. Hannah did not smile. Some surrender was too painful to celebrate. Amos took the key, then set the county stamp aside. Children remain with their father pending inspection. Miss Crowley's care routine may continue under household acknowledgement. Household what? Voss asked. Amos glanced at Wade. Acknowledgement. Means if she belongs there, he had better stop acting like the county gets to name it first. Wade turned to Hannah. In front of everyone, he took the flour sack she had packed to leave and placed it beside the soapbox on the desk. "You came through my barn," he said. "You leave that way only if you choose it." Hannah looked at Luke, at Mercy, at the key, at the man who had finally stopped hiding kindness behind caution. Then Wade opened the schoolhouse door wide, and this time, when Hannah walked beside him into the daylight, nobody had to guess which way he was taking her home. Spring did not arrive all at once at Dry Creek Ridge. It came first in the sound of water loosening beneath the pump, then in the mud drying along the wagon ruts, then in the wash line behind the Harlan house, where cloth no longer froze stiff before noon. Hannah Crowley came back from the schoolhouse through the front gate, but belonging took longer than a wagon ride. For 3 days, she still knocked before entering the kitchen. For 3 days, Wade let her. On the 4th morning, he took the flour sack from beside the tackroom cot and carried it into the house without asking. He placed it on the chair nearest the stove, not Eleanor's chair by the bedroom door, not a hidden corner, not the floor. Hannah looked at it for a long moment. Wade only said, "That spot stays warm." It was not a proposal. It was not a speech. It was better than both. That afternoon, Beatrice Vale came with the cedar chest. She did not bring church women. She did not bring a notebook. She came alone, with the blue ribbon key in one gloved hand, and grief held so tightly in her face that even Luke went quiet. The chest was opened in the kitchen. No one cut Eleanor out of anything. Hannah lifted each linen piece with clean hands and asked Luke where it should go. Some cloths were washed for Mercy. Some were folded back with cedar. One blue-edged blanket was placed over Eleanor's chair, not to keep the chair empty, but to keep the memory gentle. Beatrice watched, lips pressed thin. When she left, she paused at the porch and looked back at Hannah. "My sister liked lavender," she said. Hannah nodded. "Then I'll use less ash next batch." It was the nearest thing to forgiveness either woman could carry. Weeks passed. County inspection came and found boiled linen, labeled salve, clean water, a repaired cradle runner, and a boy who could explain baby folds with more seriousness than any clerk knew what to do with. Mr. Voss withdrew one supply account. Wade lost the Vale cattle credit. Nora Pike brought tallow anyway. By the next market day, 2 women who had once whispered near the flour barrel asked, without meeting Hannah's eyes, whether her soap might help winter hands. Hannah sold them each 1 bar and charged fair. By then, Luke had built a crooked shelf beside the kitchen window. Wade planed it smooth, but Luke insisted on carving the first mark himself. It was not straight. It was barely a letter. No one corrected it. On the first warm morning, Hannah carried Mercy's clean blanket outside. Luke followed with wooden pins. Wade brought a saddle blanket from the barn and hung it at the far end of the line. Then Hannah took 1 small square of soft linen from her soap box. It was the strip she had saved through rain, shame, and every room that had refused to keep her. She pinned it beside Mercy's blanket. Wade saw it and went still. Luke looked from the little cloth to Hannah's belly, then grinned like the sun had found him first. Mercy kicked in Wade's arms and reached toward the moving white square. The wash line lifted in the spring wind. A baby blanket, a saddle blanket, a small cloth waiting for a child not yet born, all on the same line. The house was not clean because nothing had ever stained it. It was clean because no one standing inside it was called a stain anymore.